Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and this is our TNA video for the week. First off, before we get into it, I know you just noticed, and you might have noticed on our Top 10 Halloween Havoc countdown, but we have a new intro. That comes to you from our friend, the Mass Tweeter, at MassTweeterX on Twitter. Also from IWX Show, IWXShow.com. Which leads me into another big announcement before we start our TNA show. Heel Heat has joined the IWX network. You can see the links for our videos there at IWXShow.com. There's a tab for Heel Heat. Click on it. There will be links for our videos there as well as being on YouTube. Extremely happy about this. Extremely excited to work with people like the Mass Tweeter. If you guys listen to the IWX Show podcast, hosted by Tweeter, Lovely Laura, and Bunkhouse Bob. Great friends, great people, couldn't be more happy. Also joining us, that's Tuesday nights at 7 for the IWX show. Wednesday nights at 10, another addition to the IWX network. Pro Wrestling is Dead, hosted by Shafee and the Wheeler, Wednesday nights at 10. Exciting things happen at the IWX network. Glad to be part of it, glad to be part of the expansion. Thank you to the Mass Tweeter for the intro. Great guy, one of the real supporters of Heel Heat, one of the guys that's helped us to get where we're at. I couldn't thank him more for what he's done for us and how he's helped our business, our show grow. Thank you again, Tweeter. Now on to the show. We had Dixie Carter coming to the ring, basically announcing that they're going to do a tournament for the world title, which they've now vacated, although AJ Styles is booked to defend it this weekend in AAA against Judas Messias, and on November 16th in World 1, which is a Great Muda's promotion out of Japan. Kind of doing the CM Punk storyline. She introduces some of the participants: James Storm, Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy, Austin Aries, Bobby Roode, Chris Sabin, which leaves us one left. Brings out Bully Ray, asking why he hasn't been announced. She tells him, "You've already lost to Jeff Hardy twice." This brings out Mr. Anderson. Bully Ray and Anderson get in a fight. They end the segment. She announces that there will be a gauntlet-style elimination match later on in the show for the last competitor in the contest, or in the tournament. Bully and Anderson get in a fight backstage where Bully attacks him as he's handcuffed, setting up to further their feud, moving Bully out of the main event picture, out of the world title picture for now. I think it's time. The whole Aces and Eights thing has got stale. Bully Ray is a great character. He needs to move away from it a bit and then maybe come back. They could always bring him back as a top-level heel. Let some other people in there. Let some of the ego guys of that nature, Bobby Roode, come up and become bigger heels. Now, speaking of that, we had a rematch for the World Tag Team Championships. The Bromans, Jesse Goddard and Robbie E. versus Gunner and Storm. Jesse and Robbie win again, surprisingly. I'm liking where they're going with this. I think this is a team that could go far. A lot of people have complained that they were being used as comedy jobbers. Now they're the world champions. I can understand that, but I'm very okay with it. I think the guys, especially Robbie E., are more talented than the jobber status that they were given. And I like this. I think that they could have a long, successful run, build them to be bigger parts, more integral parts of the company. Another guy that I think is going to be a big part of the company going forward, Ethan Carter III, wrestles at a rematch from Bound for Glory, North Furnham. Now, if you guys didn't see the show, North Furnham is, I believe he wrestles out of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and some of the West Coast independent scene. I want to say Championship Wrestling for Hollywood. I forget what he goes by there. But he's really just a skinny guy with a generic black singlet. Ethan Carter gets the easy win off him, cuts a promo afterwards. Very reminiscent of Tully Blanchard. Thank you to Bob Delph, a.k.a. Bunkhouse Bob from the IWX show, for pointing that out. I could totally see it, and I really see that this kid could be a superstar. He's got the look, he's got the charisma, he's got enough of the in-ring talent to be so. So I think he's someone that you're going to see in the future as a major star in TNA. Next up, a match that has a lot of the major stars of TNA. The gauntlet match for the last spot in the title. We had Sting coming out, followed by Cass, followed by Nux, followed by Eric Young, followed by Christopher Daniels, followed by followed by Manic, then Magnus. And then order of elimination was Nux, Mannix, EY, Daniels, and then Sting and Cass both get eliminated by Magnus, who kind of sneaks up on Sting as he's eliminating Cass. Further putting into the tension there, further bringing Magnus to a point where he's going to split off from the main event Mafia, maybe get rid of the main event Mafia altogether. Magnus earns his part in the tournament. I like what they're doing. I like the slow build to it. I like that they didn't rush it right into there. I think when the payoff finally hits, we're going to see another Sting versus Magnus match, and I think on that match, Sting will really make Magnus. It'll be more violent, possibly no disqualification, something of that nature, where Magnus gets to show how brutal he can be. Now, speaking of brutal, let's go right into our question of the week from last week. And the brutal part you'll see in a second. Who do you think is TNA's best talker? Now, we got some answers from our friends. First from James King. Best talker in TNA? Wow, that's a tough one. I would have to go with Bully Ray or Mr. Anderson, although AJ Styles is improving his mic work. Interesting choices there. Very different styles. I see where you're going with that. I enjoy all three of the guys. Next is from our friend Metal Roller 45. Austin Aries, in my opinion, is the best talker in TNA. Rude, Daniels, and Kaz are up there as well. Kind of where I thought everybody would go with this, followed by our friend Lord Bogglesworth. In my opinion, the best talkers in TNA are Ego, agreeing with Metal Ruler. Their arrogance and humor on the mic exceed anybody in the company today. They're hilarious. Bobby Roode's Ego Hall of Fame ceremony is one of the best segments in recent times. I totally agree, and this show shows it. I do think Ego has the three best talkers in TNA. Austin Aries is very good. Bully Ray and Mr. Anderson are great as well. But I do think Ego is just a notch above everybody else. Kurt Angle is actually an excellent talker as well. He could be goofy, he could be serious, he could be heel, he could be face. He could do anything. But I think Ego is a notch above everybody else, with the main one being Christopher Daniels. I think Christopher Daniels is the best talker TNA has ever produced. It'd be a shame if Chris Daniels ends his TNA career without winning their world title, as much as he's meant to the company over the years. Now here's where the brutal comes in, folks. I told you it would come around. Who is the worst talker on the TNA roster? Let us know what you think. Hit us up on Facebook, hit us up on Twitter. Put it down where? Down there in the comments. And yes, I know I botched when I said the worst talker and explained it. Feel free to rip me for that and put me in the worst talker category too if you'd like. Coming up next, we have two very entertaining knockouts going at it. ODB getting her rematch versus Gail Kim. Gail Kim has Lady Tapa again with her. Of course, plays into the match. Gail wins over ODB. Pretty much knew that was coming. It's kind of the thing that they're building up this unholy alliance between Gail Kim and Lady Tapa. I imagine at some point it's going to go the way that all of your bodyguard things go, where the bodyguard feels like they're being held down by the person that they're hired to guard, eventually turns face and challenges them. We've seen it with Diesel and Shawn Michaels. We've seen it with Virgil and Ted DiBiase. We've seen it over and over again through the years, and I don't think that this is going to be any different. It's a tried and true storytelling method. It's worked, and it'll continue to work as long as professional wrestling is there. Now, coming up after this, something that works on so many levels. We've seen all through the night Bad Influence are both dressed up as Sherlock Holmes, looking for the answers to the Abyss situation. Extremely gifted and extremely funny and talented. I would pay to watch 2 hours of them just acting as Sherlock Holmes. They bring out Eric Young. Eric Young's dressed up as Joseph Park. They eventually attack him, which brings out the monster Abyss and attacks them. So we're starting to see a little bit of maybe Bad Influence is catching on that Abyss and Joseph Park are the same guy, not brothers. Brother. I really hope that the end game is that the Joseph Park character disappears. I think he's way more interesting as Abyss, way more of someone that is important to the company as Abyss. He's a Grand Slam champion. He's won every belt that they've had. So I think it's going forward, them focusing him as just the Abyss character, to me, would be so much better for the company. Now coming off of that, we had our main event match of the night. Another rematch from the pay-per-view. Kurt Angle versus Bobby Roode. Just as good the second time around. Kurt Angle continues to sell his injury angles. Bobby Roode picks up the win again. What can you say? That anytime you put these two guys in the ring with each other, it's going to be an amazing match, and this one did not disappoint at all. I thought it was great from the beginning to the end, how they worked everything in. Kurt Angle and Bobby Roode are two of probably, if not two of the top 10 wrestlers in the world, maybe two of the top 5 wrestlers in the world. If I was TNA, these guys and AJ Styles would be the focal point going forward, to be honest with you. I mean, they could easily have the tournament end with Roode and Angle as the finals. I would be extremely excited about that. I haven't looked at the brackets to see if that's how it would work out, but I hope it will. That would be my dream match for the championship or the finals, and then the winner face off against AJ Styles, or maybe AJ Styles comes in and interferes in that match, thus making it a 3-way at Genesis. Who knows? That's thinking ahead of time, going a little bit further into the future. But that's stuff I would enjoy seeing. I think the three of them could have a great 3-way feud. Even if it's the two of them, I think going forward, Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle don't need to be split up from each other. It's only going to get bigger and better. Now, speaking of bigger and better, let's go right into our rating system. If you've seen the show, we have a 1 to 5 scale. 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. 1's a Jesse Goddard, 2's a Garrett Bischoff, 3's a James Storm, 4's a Christopher Daniels, 5 is a Bobby Roode. I'm giving this a 4. James Storm all the way. I thought there was a lot of interesting stuff on the show. Very little that I didn't like about the show. The only things I think could have been better, I'm not a huge fan of the gauntlet style format. I wish it would have been just a straight up battle royal. The rematch after rematch after rematch, so close to the pay-per-view, kind of makes me think, why would I buy the pay-per-view if I know they're going to rematch it a couple weeks later? The Ethan Carter III's hand-picked opponent, I understand that it's building his character, but we're past the time of the jobber matches, so to me, it's a little cheesy, but I understand why they do it. Not much to build on, but it was a very solid show. I give it a Christopher Daniels, give it a 4. And before I go, just want to mention again, thank you to the Masked Tweeter, at MaskedTweeterX on Twitter. Follow him. Interesting guy. He does anything from NFL picks. He makes great songs about professional wrestling and other things as well. He does some commentary on wrestling. Hosts the IWX show, which is on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Go to IWX.com, follow the links. There's also a link to the iTunes to watch or listen to any of the past podcasts. Some great guests have been on there. Cliff Compton, Terry Funk, J.J. Dillon, Freight Train from $5 Wrestling, Big Donnie from $5 Wrestling. You've had some really great guests come in. I believe Zbyszko, Larry Zbyszko was on there. And just a great guy, Axel Rotten. the stars go over and over. Tito Santana, I mean, go there and check it out. This guy, they've had a lot of who's who in wrestling, past, present, and future. And this week's guest is going to be Zane Riley, which I'm really looking forward to. He's a guy that's tearing up the indies right now, a guy that I'm a huge fan of. And also, check out debuting this week on Wednesday at 10 p.m. Pro Wrestling is Dead, hosted by Shafee and the Wheeler. I haven't heard much about what it's about, but I think it's going to be interesting. If you've ever heard Shafee, he's a radio show host in the Michigan area. Pretty funny guy, pretty interesting stories. He was at one point he was a manager of Sabu and even wrestled a little bit himself, but that's a different story. We'll let them tell that on their show. And the reason we're mentioning this again is because you can find Heel Heat on iwxshow.com. Very extremely proud to be joined up with these guys. Some great wrestling knowledge, all on one site. You can get their podcast, you can get our videos, you can get all kinds of great knowledge, all kinds of great stuff. It's definitely a destination site for any serious wrestling fan. But basically, that's all I have to say about this. My name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of Heel Heat.